All right.
Wonderful.
So we're live.
We're
from
live.
The incubator.
Is
the
this
new incubator?
exactly coming up on the end of cohort 2 right now?
End of cohort 2. 2 more weeks, 2 in a little bit.
Yeah.
A lot is planned, and let me start by saying that we have Marco Casalaina from Einstein coming in.
VP of Product Management from Einstein.
Yeah, really looking forward to chatting with him, but he's a little late, so Mike Kreaden.
I've agreed to stand in.
Standing in for now.
Which is wonderful. Always a pleasure.
Great. While we're waiting for Marco and to talk about Einstein, let's talk about graduation week.
Yeah, absolutely. So usually at this time in the cohort, there's a lot of activity with the cohort members. Companies are, running around like chickens without heads, so to speak, but not really, in an organized fashion, solidifying relationships that they already have with key stakeholders at Salesforce, working on getting products to market. We had a great success rate, thanks to CRM Science actually helping the cohort. We had a phenomenal number of apps. We'll see, hopefully all of them will get through, but almost every company that was in the incubator successfully submitted for security review before the Dreamforce deadline, which was great, which gives us a little bit of additional time and actually to work on kind of go-to-market positioning and some of the messaging that's needed to have a successful app exchange listing.
Right.
So that's really good. And then just within our last couple of weeks, what we're doing is we're focusing more in terms of the fit and finish, in terms of helping those companies get to market. So we're going to have Judy Lohr of Cloud App Capital Partners is going to be coming in. So she's a well-respected VC, but also she was one of the original product managers at Salesforce, and actually, from my perspective, is one of the best folks from a positioning and messaging perspective, product marketing wise. She's coming in next week to do a session with us,
Awesome.
Which I think will be very helpful. We're looking to do our final demo jam as well. This is internally focused, but still, I think that everyone wants to get the coveted prize, that trophy, to take home, which should be good, and that's going to be, I think, a fun time for us next week. And then we roll into graduation week. And graduation week for us is really capped with our main event, which is Wednesday night. If you go to the Salesforce Incubator page on Facebook here, hopefully you can put a link here,
yeah.
But I'm sure that it is already linked. What you can do is RSVP there, and hopefully we can see you there. And we're going to be doing a little bit of a variant to what
So that's on the 27th, right?
27th, Wednesday night. Evening time.
Open for everybody.
Open for everybody. Please come. We have a great facility here. We'd love to welcome you here. And we're going to be doing something along the lines of a product reveal. We're really working hard with our startups here to help them hone their customer pitch. So this isn't a typical demo day where you're doing an investor pitch, shopping for dollars. We're really focusing on helping these companies get to market. So that will be, for some folks, the first time that they'll be able to see these solutions ready for market and actually see that customer presentation.
Yeah, so we had like this mad rush to get everybody, the technical aspect of the incubator done by the end of the month, last month, which was the
Dreamforce
deadline.
Yeah.
And now we're kind of focused on the business side of things, if you will.
Exactly. Which is good. Which is, I think, for a lot of the companies that we've been working with, I would say that the main focus hasn't been necessarily on the technical side, because we were fortunate to have a lot of companies that came in that had already architected their solutions. They were already working with some early customers. There's quite a bit of kind of fit and finish in terms of getting like a really good Salesforce app done. And that's where you guys at CRM Science, I think, really lent a hand in terms of kind of architectural insights into doing a good app. But the go-to-market piece, I think, is the one thing that Salesforce has a fantastic community. So that's the one thing that, in terms of actually helping put some focus there. And if you remember, just what was it, about a month ago with Midwest Dreamin',
Yeah, that's
an
right.
opportunity to go and commingle with, for some of the companies, it was the first time to commingle with Salesforce customers. And then, just trying to think, then in terms of in terms of a break in between cohorts, what we're going to be doing is that during that time, we're going to be helping companies get ready for Dreamforce.
Right.
We have our startup valley at Dreamforce again, where we're going to be able to feature our startups. So we'll have some from cohort 1 as well as cohort 2 that will actually be there,
Cool.
which is wonderful. That's kind of it.
Yeah.
So wrapping up cohort 2, we're going to be taking a little bit of time to actually go through kind of all the feedback in terms of figuring out what's working, what we'd like to do better. I think we had a really good cohort this time in terms of folks that really kind of pushed us, wanting more engagement with product management, having earlier access to technology, having a more predictable way, if you wish, in terms of being able to just, ingest, everything that Salesforce has. So we're going to be looking to up-level that and figuring out novel ways of doing that.
Yeah, I think that'll be good to continuously learn from, the previous experience of previous cohorts and kind of like move in. I feel like one of the things that we've done, collectively in this cohort is we put together like a more of a process around creating apps within the Salesforce ecosystem, helping incubator companies be more, have a clearer path to having an app and be listed. So,
and that was actually that was one of the, I think, good improvements, and that was actually an initiative that you and CRM Science had undertaken on your own, which was great, very much appreciated. So that was, again, one of the learnings that we had, having a very predictable, methodical way to approach, especially for companies that have existing products. What is the best practice, and what does that kind of journey look like in terms of discovery, ultimately integrating with Salesforce, understanding the data model, understanding the Salesforce persona in terms of the user and the admin, and then ultimately crafting what would be an engaging and meaningful application for the Salesforce market.
Yeah, and I think that for future cohorts, I think that it'd be a huge help that they actually have already, like, someone on the business side, someone from the technical side that is kind of from Salesforce, kind of ushering them through the process.
Right. So internally, we call that our white glove program.
That's right.
Where we actually kind of shepherded the companies through. One thing is that Salesforce is kind of blessed with a very broad platform. A lot of technologies to first kind of digest, understand, and then, if you wish, graft into the product. Or, so from the technologist perspective, it's understanding what to leverage within the platform. And because we have such a compressed timeline, but we also have the opportunity to bring everybody together, we can actually help them along that journey and really accelerate the path to success in that.
Yeah, I think another really great development that happened during this cohort, unrelated to the cohort, was the new connector program that the App Exchange came up with, kind of establishing that as a real program. And that will be a lot of times the first foray of companies into the Salesforce world, and then it's a little bit easier for them to digest. And potentially from there they can build bigger apps.
Yeah, and that's actually, I think, a really good one, because we actually had some companies that had a grander vision, if you wish, but instead of waiting to architect and build an entire end-to-end solution, what they chose to do was they chose to take their existing solution, put the requisite thought into it, deliver as a connector app, and then be in market working with customers as they then provide further validation and discovery for that more comprehensive application. And what they've done is they compressed the time in terms of getting to market, then ultimately finding MVP, and then feeding that back into the organization in terms of the product, the product side of the house, in order to be able to deliver, the killer app. And so I'm very kind of hopeful, in terms of that path to success, because one of the things that we know is that with Salesforce technology, with the Salesforce platform, that you have a lot of what you need in terms of infrastructure, in terms of technology pieces to go to market. And here's Marco.
Hello, Chair Marco.
Wonderful.
We're live.
We're live. Hello.
Excellent.
Hi, live people.
Come in here.
Here we are.
And I need to kind of then
There you go.
duck out as well. I think you need to be in the hot seat.
Yeah,
Oh,
there you
man.
go.
We're going to switch.
Oh, this is a hot seat. You warmed this up nice.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Not too much.
Yeah, so are we done?
I think that we're done. So anyways, just wrapping that up, and just in terms of helping folks understand
Right.
that there's a lot of stuff that's in the platform that they can leverage. It isn't necessary to be able to kind of grok everything in one shot. You should actually be working with customers to actually flesh out the use cases in terms of delivering, the penultimate solution for the Salesforce customer.
Right. I think we got on a good path with this cohort, and hopefully that will really take off in the next cohort.
We're looking to build on that.
Yeah.
So now why don't we switch gears into Einstein, because that's going to be where the excitement comes from, I think, coming out of cohort.
Absolutely.
Cohort.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so now we're live with Marco, our guest for today. Marco, tell us about what you do with Einstein.
All right. Well, I'm Marco Casalaina, and I am VP Products of Einstein here at Salesforce.
And what does that mean?
What does that mean? Well, I run the product team that builds the Einstein platform. And the Einstein platform, as you know it today, is exposed through a series of apps and a few APIs. There's the apps like Sales Cloud Einstein, and there are a couple of other apps that you may have seen. There are actually 18 of them that are GA today, believe it or not. And there's a number of APIs as well, some that are in GA, such as Einstein Vision, and some that are currently in pilot, like the Einstein Language Services that does sentiment extraction, intent extraction, and stuff like that.
Right. So how do you see that your effort tie in with the marketing efforts that Salesforce has? That's a lot of times the marketing is ahead of the game, and how do you bring it back together?
Yeah, I mean, the marketing is ahead of the game, and it was, Einstein was launched almost a year ago today. Actually, it was on September 19th last year. That was a little bit ahead of, well, it was ahead of Dreamforce, in fact. It actually got launched about 2 months before Dreamforce. And, at that time, we didn't have any Einstein applications that were generally available, and they all started going into pilot in November, and they started rolling into generally available status starting in the spring release of this year. So that was back in February of this year. This time around, and you'll see a fair bit of new marketing coming out now. This time around, it's a different kind of story. We do have a number of things that are going into pilot in the winter release that you'll be seeing at Dreamforce around. And so, as I mentioned earlier, today, Einstein is a set of applications and a set of APIs. But in the middle of those two things is a declarative platform, the ability to actually build your own predictions within the Salesforce platform and add intelligence to your own application. So we're looking forward to talking more about that.
That's the builder, right?
That's the builder.
Or unless there's a new name.
Yeah, well, we'll see what the name ends up being, but that's what we're talking about. So basically opening up the platform to you more and more. And meanwhile, there are numerous other applications that will be launched at Dreamforce that are all along that spectrum. And so in between, there's sort of an in-between space between pre-built applications and declarative platforms. So things like case classification, in which your cases, people customize their cases in all different ways. And so case classification is a little bit more of a flexible application where you can make predictions on your own custom pick lists, but only within the context of case. So it's sort of fixed to case, and it has a user interface and user experience that is fixed to case, and for good reason, because it kind of is supposed to work with the process that an agent goes through in triaging cases. But nonetheless, it's more customizable than some of the applications that have come before it.
Right. And how do you promote Einstein and the tools that Einstein provides, but how does that mesh with existing clients? How do we get clients or Salesforce customers on using Einstein?
Well, this is an evolving story. And so the first of the Einstein applications, I mean, we've had a fair bit of adoption now. It took us a little while to get there. And I think from our perspective, there were some things that we had to learn that, in some sense, it's funny because a lot of the Einstein team, including myself, have done AI before. We've done AI startups, and I myself came from a company called KXN. We have members of my team that came from things like Everstring, Lattice Engines, Alpine Data Labs. So we have lots of folks that have been in this world before, and yet, for some reason, it didn't quite permeate our consciousness that even here at Salesforce, the prediction by itself is not sufficient, that it has to participate in a business process. And so one of the things that we've found is that it takes longer than we thought for customers, particularly larger customers, to deploy Einstein capabilities even after they've bought them, because they have to get it into their business processes. And so a lead score, for example, lead score is the simplest thing, right? Everybody does lead scoring, right? I used to do it myself. And it's a simple thing, and it seems like a simple thing, but for a company that really never had any notion of lead prioritization before, they were doing some rudimentary thing with rules. There's a few steps that they have to take to get their, what they would call EBRs, or their inside sales reps, to pick that up and start using it. I expect that will continue to be true for most Einstein applications as we go forward. So as we look forward towards releasing new Marketing Cloud Einstein applications, as we look forward to releasing, as I said, case classification, that's going to be true. And then as we move towards a declarative platform, and as I mentioned with these APIs, we already have some notion of a platform. It's just not as declarative as Salesforce usually is, although it will be. There we're going to see the additional burden of we collectively, not just us, but us and you all, are going to have to help our customers understand what are the outcomes that you're trying to predict, and to represent that in a crisp enough form that we can make an honest prediction about it. And this is not easy. I mean, most people don't. It's really weird. You have to shift your brain into a different gear, and it's a learned skill. It's something that it took me months to figure that out when I was at KXN. I took over as VP products at KXN, and I'd never really done predictive apps before in this way. And it took me about 3 months to really sit down with customers and understand what it was we were talking about. And once I got it, once I was able to shift my brain into that gear, it stayed that way. And now I can think that way. But it is kind of like learning a new language. Until you start dreaming in that language, you're not really fluent. So you're all going to need to. This is a new world, and part of this new world too, by the way, is training is the new coding. So whereas in the past and with other kinds of features, you would code it up and your customers would pick it up and they'd use it and stuff like that. This one doesn't work that way, right? You can't just demo with demo data either, because demo data doesn't work for this. It doesn't build there's no correlations in demo data that will allow you to build a real model. And so you have to take extra steps and do extra customer pilots, more than you would do normally, to get this stuff to work. So there is much more of a process with artificial intelligence apps than there are with traditional applications.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, from our experience working with our customers so far, the early adopters, first of all, you have to convince them. Second, some customers, they simply don't want to do it because they say, oh, we'll deal with it later. Well, let's do X, Y, and Z first. That's a problem, actually. They need to think about Einstein or AI as part of X, Y, and Z, as opposed to the next version or the next thing that they're going to do. But then I agree with training. People think if it's a real data, it's good data. No, that's not true. You have to massage it quite a bit to.
Well, you have to label it for one thing. I mean, think about what you guys did at CRM Science. I mean, you guys built a layer on top of the Einstein.ai APIs, the vision and the language that I mentioned earlier, that make it declarative for customers. And that's cool. You still need a labeling tool.
Yeah.
You need. I mean, if you're doing intent extraction, for example, we can't make a pre-built model for intent extraction. Everybody's intents are different, so you're going to basically have to have a bunch of tracts of text. And somebody's going to have to go in there and say, this one's about shipping, and this one's about order cancellation, and this one's about, whatever. And it's going to have to manually classify that for the AI to learn. And this is actually in general in the industry a fairly unsolved problem. I mean, some folks like Google, you look at what Google does, and they're very, very clever, right? If you think about what they're really doing with Google Photos, for example, Google Photos is the world's largest labeling tool. Well, Facebook is like that too, right? I use Google Photos. I uploaded 10,000 photos to Google Photos this weekend.
Wow.
And when I did that, I went in and I clicked on some people's faces, and I was like, this is my daughter and this is my wife and stuff like that, so that and that way I can search by them. I can say, give me pictures of my wife, in September of last year or whatever. And that's awesome. But also, Google is benefiting from that. They're like, hey, now we have all this wonderful labeled data. That's awesome, And meanwhile, the other thing I love that Google is doing is their CAPTCHA tool. You ever do your forget password and it shows you the 9 pictures and it's like, which one of these contain a street sign?
Right.
They don't necessarily know. And they're using you to label their data set for them. It's very clever.
Right.
And so they're basically saying, okay, they kind of know, right? They have some confidence, but they're basically using you to reinforce their learning so that they're more and more certain of what is a street sign, what's not, what's a license plate, what's not.
Right.
And you'll see more and more types of objects showing up in there. So there are some ways in which you can, if you're a certain type of company and you have a certain type of data, you can use your users to implicitly label your data. There's also the notion of, implicit labeling in general exists in Salesforce. So let's say, for example, let's say that you are using the case object.
Case type.
At case type, exactly, right? And your case type is an implicit label because you might get all these email cases and your agents are going in there and they're setting that case type field. And so that's what I call an implicitly labeled data set. So that does exist in Salesforce. Maybe it's a little bit more subtle than the brute force methods that Google is using, but it does exist. And so look for those because those can be to your benefit going forward. Those are things that you can automate.
Yep, exactly. Those are the things that are the easiest to do intent for.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. And then I think that the post-prediction process is also something that it's not enough to have a use case that you know what you want to predict on. The prediction is just the beginning of the journey, right? Then
That's
you
right.
have to do something with the prediction.
Exactly.
Start your unique business process as a Salesforce customer.
That's right. And that means, you're going to be cutting a swath across everything that Salesforce does. The things that we're doing now, the kinds of things that we're releasing or we will be releasing shortly are just new on the market. These things don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
They've never existed like this before. And in the past, if you go to build a predictive application, you would usually have a whole set of very skilled people to do this. You'd have a data scientist who's sitting there cleaning up your data, and then you'd have people that would actually build it into an application, build the rules around it and stuff like that. I've worked with old school rules engines like Blaze and Corticon and iLog and all that stuff. But in this new cloud world, a lot of those tools don't really exist yet. There's not, for example, there really isn't a real concrete notion of a cloud-based rules engine. Although, Salesforce has various incarnations of that in Flow and Process Builder and Workflow rules. But
the platform itself allows you to build those, and we built some of those for some customers, but not something greater.
Yeah, but this is an opportunity for ISVs in the space to kind of come in and fill gaps that are left by the need to put process around these predictions.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll do this prediction stuff for you, and to some extent, yeah, of course, we're going to augment our rules engine to try to make it as easy for you as possible
Mm-hmm.
over the long term. But in the short term, these capabilities are going to be there. Customers want to use them today. They really want this stuff, but they're going to need help. And we're going to have to help them, and you guys are going to have to help them.
Absolutely. And, we've started, we're trying to evangelize Einstein and the APIs in particular, because those are the geeky things that we want to handle. So we built the AI lab, which, takes advantage of or allows customers to take advantage of APIs that normally, they need a developer to deal with, but, intent, sentiment, vision. But I think that the opportunity is great for ISVs to come in, to use, the app that we built or build their own and really have predictions within their apps.
Yeah. Now that said, there are things that Einstein doesn't do and probably will never do. So, I always say Einstein is not a general purpose AI. And so, for example, you would not build a self-driving car with Einstein. But also, a self-driving car is pretty distant out there. But if you think about it, other things that you probably wouldn't build with Einstein, like prop trading systems, the kind of thing that Goldman Sachs does with the high-speed trading, Einstein is not made for that. Einstein is made to be artificial intelligence for the Salesforce platform. So, we used to say artificial intelligence for CRM, which is true. But of course, as we know, the Salesforce platform is used for many more things than just CRM. And as we start to become a more declarative platform, we'll start to be more generally applicable. But
I would say for business.
For business, yeah, that's another way to look at it. But regardless, it's not for all businesses and it's not for all people. It primarily acts on data that's in Salesforce in some fashion.
Absolutely.
And at the moment, at least, it's not. And with the exception of the deep learning stuff like vision and language, at the moment, at least, it's not a real-time prediction engine. So there is a delay there. It's a batch process that runs. Although, in the medium term, I would say we are looking to add that capability to actually give real-time predictions. But even then, things like stock trading, it's probably not real-time enough for something like that.
Yeah.
We're not talking about nanoseconds here.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, so that's kind of all the time we have. Do you have any final words that you want to convey to the people?
All I can say is pay attention at Dreamforce. Take a look at the Einstein keynote. If you are at Dreamforce, we will have a whole floor of Moscone Center that will be devoted to nothing but Einstein. And we have an AI day. I think it's the third floor, actually.
Third floor.
But it probably will be hard to miss. So in any case, as I said, and I've alluded to, there's lots of stuff coming, lots of really interesting things. So pay close attention, watch this space.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Marco.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us.